Hi everyone, my name is Alex and you're watching the iFace channel. Welcome to the fourth episode of our videocast, Frontend Interview Questions, where we break down the most common questions you might face during an interview. I've also created a website where all the answers are neatly organized by topics. This way you can quickly review the necessary material before your interview or focus on areas that need improvement. Don't forget to share the questions you've been asked during interviews in the comments. Your input helps us create new episodes. Let's start with a question about HTML, which is the perfect one to ask at the very beginning. What is HTML and what is it used for? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which is a language used for structuring web content. It's important to note that HTML is a markup language, not a programming language. It's used to create structured text that browsers can interpret and display on the screen as web page elements. Simply put, HTML is the skeleton or framework of any web page. It provides the structure and layout, helping the browser understand how to display the content and what type of content is being used on the page. Input types in HTML. It's a broad topic and there's a lot to cover. But here's the main idea. Let's quickly list the most common input types and highlight a couple of features for each. Here's how the explanation might go. In HTML, the input element is used to collect data from users. The type of input is defined by the type attribute, which determines its specific functionality. Key input types. Type text. This is the most common input type used for entering text, numbers, or special characters. Type password, designed for entering passwords. The entered characters are masked, typically displayed as dots or asterisks. Type email, used for entering email addresses. On mobile devices, the keyboard includes special keys to make email input easier. Type number allows only numerical input. On mobile devices, it opens a numeric keyboard. Type button and type submit. These transform the input into a button. The submit button is specifically used to send form data. Type checkbox creates a square box that can be checked. It's great for selecting one or multiple options. Type radio generates a circular button that allows the user to select only one option from a group. Type date, type month, type date time local. These are used for entering dates or times. They often come with a drop-down calendar or time selector. And there you have it. This is a concise overview of input types in HTML that should answer the question effectively. What is the canvas element and what is it used for? Canvas is an HTML5 element designed for creating and displaying images, gradients, complex animations, and other graphics. It provides a space where you can use JavaScript to draw various objects, transform them, and adjust their properties. Essentially, Canvas offers a low-level API for working with graphics. Let's move to CSS and tackle the first question. What is a CSS rule? In other words, you're being asked to describe the basic syntax of CSS. A CSS rule consists of two main parts. Selector. This defines which elements on an HTML page will be targeted for styling. Declaration block. This is a structure enclosed in curly braces, where properties and their values are specified. The styles defined in the declaration block are applied to the elements selected by the selector. The difference between class and ID in CSS. When we talk about the difference between class and ID in CSS and styling, it's quite significant. There's an unwritten rule. For styling, it's better to use classes, while for adding logic through JavaScript, IDs are more suitable. This rule is based on the unique characteristics of each attribute. Firstly, an ID must be unique on the page. This means an element with a specific ID value can only appear once. On the other hand, classes can be used multiple times across the page, and a single element can have several classes. Secondly, an element can have only one ID, but it can have multiple classes. Classes can be combined in any quantity and order, giving you more flexibility in styling. Finally, when comparing specificity, an ID has much higher specificity. Its value is 100. This means that overriding style set with an ID is more challenging and would require using long selector chains, which is inconvenient. Therefore, for styling in CSS, it's better to use classes, and for logic in JavaScript, use IDs. What is a CSS sprite and what is it used for? A CSS sprite is an image that combines several small images into one large image. This approach is commonly used for icon sets. First and foremost, it helps reduce the number of requests to the server. Instead of sending multiple requests, we send just one. Additionally, CSS sprites allow for preloading content that isn't visible yet. For example, an icon that appears on hover will be loaded in advance. This prevents flickering when switching images. Now let's move on to JavaScript. How do we convert any data type to a Boolean and what values are considered falsy in JavaScript. To convert any data type to a Boolean value, either true or false, there are two main approaches. The first is to use the Boolean function. We pass the data into it, and it returns a Boolean value. The second approach is using double negation, which means two exclamation marks. This also returns either true or false. In JavaScript, there are 6 values that always evaluate to falsy. These are an empty string, the number 0, null, undefined, not a number, the Boolean value, false. All of these values will evaluate to false when converted to a Boolean. String methods in JavaScript. This topic remains relevant, and in this video, we will cover the key methods for working with strings in JavaScript. Your task is to memorize as many methods as possible and know when and how to use them. 1. The length method. This method allows you to find the length of a string. It returns a numerical value, the number of characters in the string. 2. The charat method. This method allows you to get a character at a specific index. You just need to pass a number, and the method will return the character at that index. Remember, the index starts from 0, just like in arrays, not from 1. 3. The two uppercase and two lowercase methods. These methods are used to change the case of the string. To uppercase converts all characters to uppercase. To lowercase converts all characters to lowercase. 4. The index of and last index of methods. Both methods are used to search for text in a string and return the index of the first or last occurrence. If the characters are not found, they return -1. Index of finds the first occurrence. Last index of finds the last occurrence. 5. Methods for extracting a substring. Slice, substring, substar. These methods allow you to extract part of the string, but they work a bit differently. Slice and substring require specifying the starting and ending indices. The difference is that substring cannot accept negative values. Substar works differently. The second parameter specifies the length of the substring, not the ending index. 6. The replace method. This method is used to replace part of a string with another string. It takes two arguments, the text to be replaced and the new text. 7. The trim method. Trim removes whitespace characters from the beginning and end of the string. These are not all the methods, but these are sufficient for a good understanding of how to work with strings. Remember them and apply them depending on the situation. Array methods in JavaScript. Today, we'll talk about array methods in JavaScript. It's a broad topic, and there are many methods to mention, so I'll give brief explanations for each one. Length. This method helps you get the length of an array, adding and removing elements, push and unshift. These methods add an element to the array. Push adds it to the end of the array, while unshift adds it to the beginning. Both methods return the updated length of the array. Pop and shift. These methods remove elements. Pop removes the last element of the array, and shift removes the first. Both methods return the removed element. Important, all of these methods modify the original array. Concat allows you to merge several arrays into one. This method doesn't modify the original arrays, it returns a new array. Splice, a versatile method for working with arrays. With it, you can add, remove, or replace elements in an array. It modifies the original array, unlike concat. ToString converts the array to a string, and join does the same, but allows you to specify a separator between the elements. I'm not going to list every method, as that's not expected of you. However, it's important to mention methods like for each, map, filter, reduce, every, and sum. These are topics for separate discussions, which we will cover in future videos. Now let's talk about the difference between two important methods in browser JavaScript: prevent default and stop propagation. The prevent default method disables the default behavior of an element. For example, if we apply it to a link and trigger it on click, it will prevent the navigation to that URL. If used on a form, it will prevent the form from being submitted when the submit button is clicked. The stop propagation method, on the other hand, stops the event from propagating. In other words, it prevents the event from bubbling up or capturing down the DOM hierarchy. DOM element search methods. In browser-based JavaScript, there are 6 main methods for searching elements on a page. One of the most commonly used is getElementById. This method allows you to find an element by its unique ID attribute. Simply add the ID attribute to an element in HTML, assign it a name, and then in JavaScript, you can easily find that element by the given ID. The next method is getElementsByName. It searches for elements with the specified name attribute. It's important to note that this method can return multiple elements because the name attribute is not unique on the page. However, despite its functionality, this method is used fairly rarely. The getElementsByTagName method will return all elements that match the specified tag. For example, using this method, you can find all the div elements on a page. The getElementsByClassName method searches for elements by class name and also returns a collection of the found elements. This method is useful when you want to work with a group of elements that share the same class. Now, let's talk about querySelector and querySelectorAll. These two methods are very similar because they both accept any CSS selector or even a chain of selectors as an argument. This feature makes them some of the most popular DOM search methods. The difference between them is that querySelector will return only the first matching element, while querySelectorAll will return all the matching elements. And to wrap things up, as usual, here's a task. We need to create a function that will take a number as input and return the sum of all its digits. And even if the number is negative, the sum should still be calculated. So, let's start with the basic version. First, to remove the dependency on negative numbers, we use mathABS. This method gives us the absolute value of the number, so it will always be positive. Next, we convert the number to a string using the toString method. This is necessary so we can break it down into an array. Why this approach? It's logical to assume that if we need to calculate the sum of all the digits in the number, we need to extract those digits somehow, and an array is the most suitable tool for that. Once the string is turned into an array, we use the reduce method to sum all the elements. However, since the array elements are strings, we need to convert them into numbers before summing them up. We can do this by wrapping them with number. After these steps, we return the result from the function. In the advanced version, we optimize the code by removing intermediate variables and replacing number with the plus sign. The result will be exactly the same. We simply convert the string into a number using the plus operator. Finally, in the ES6 version, we replace regular functions with arrow functions. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you won't miss the upcoming episodes. And make sure to show your appreciation with a like for my efforts. See you in the next video. Bye.